Europe's skies reopen, but airlines warn passengers they could face days of delays as they work to clear the flight backlog. Farmers in Iceland face a race against time as they rush to save their herds from toxic volcanic ash. I'm still president, vows the ousted Kyrgyzstan leader, as he urges the international community not to recognise those who replaced him. And former Olympic chief Juan Antonio Samaranch dies at 89 in his native Barcelona following heart problems.
As the aviation industry counts the financial cost of the ash cloud calamity, thousands of flights have been taking to the skies over Europe. Some 21,000 out of 28,000 scheduled flights were expected to take off today. Many passengers have made it home after being marooned abroad for days by airspace restrictions.
It's absolutely chaos out there. You can't imagine it. People are stranded everywhere, desperate, absolutely desperate to get home.
We are very, very glad to be home. It's been a very hectic time, very stressful time.
Questions are now being asked about why governments took as long as they did to lift the blanket airspace ban despite successful test flights.
We now have to sit down whenever we are back to a normal situation, and we have to examine altogether any lessons we could possibly learn from this. We have acquired a huge wealth of knowledge in this experience, and that must be used for the benefit of not just European aviation but worldwide aviation.
The ash cloud has thinned and drifted westward, opening a window of opportunity for flights to resume, and meteorologists in Iceland say the volcano is producing less ash now, most of which is hanging at or below 6,000 metres. One test flight has recorded differing levels of ash over several locations in Germany. The report said the highest density was comparable to dust above the Sahara Desert.
Act of God won't wash with the European Commission. Even though the volcanic eruption was the work of nature, Brussels has warned companies that air passenger rights must be respected. Consumer rights groups said compliance with the rules has been low and even urged government sanctions against shirkers. Jilted travellers have the right to a ticket refund with all taxes or rerouted alternative transport, the right to accommodation and to be fed if they're delayed.
They are not negotiable, and we expect airlines to enforce them, and we expect national authorities to do their job and watch to make sure that the laws are enforced, and we in turn at European level are watching the situation very carefully.
The Airlines Association IATA complained they're enough out of pocket already, more than 1.2 billion euros.
We estimate that the airline were losing $200 million a day in revenue. And that was a conservative number because it was related to a limited number of hubs.
IATA acknowledged that even under extraordinary circumstances, the EU holds airlines responsible for paying for hotels, meals and telephoning. Many passengers are still stuck. Keep those receipts.
Danish singer Mads Langer and his girlfriend managed to beat the travel chaos by taking a taxi to Copenhagen all the way from Rome, where they were stranded. They arrived back in the Danish capital tired but relieved after the 26-hour journey. Langer used Facebook to beg for help after the frustration of sitting around doing nothing in Italy waiting for flights. A Danish taxi firm responded and sent 2 drivers to do the 4,000-kilometre round trip to Rome, free of charge, on condition that the musician agreed to play at the company's summer party.
It
was crazy and too much, but I had to get home, said Langer. It was urgent for me to get home, so we just did it. It's a little rock and roll, you know. Pretty cool to take a cab from Rome to Copenhagen. Mads Langer will be back in Italy soon and won't forget the debt he owes, playing that special summer gig for some happy Danish taxi drivers.
As Europe takes to the skies again, down on the ground, Iceland's farmers fight with the fallout from last week's volcanic eruption. The Eyjafjallajökull glacier spewed out a heavy ash cloud over much of the countryside, leaving farmers scrambling to protect their herds.
About 10 o'clock in the Friday evening, we got the ash, and
it was dark next 36 hours, and it was very, very, very dark, and it was even darker than dark. We had to have masks, otherwise we would have breath in the ash, and that's very unhealthy. So it was not a good feeling. I lost my time senses.
If animals inhale the highly toxic ash, it can cause internal bleeding, long-term bone damage, and even loss of teeth.
My neighbors, yes, their job and their livelihood, it is all gone. Some of them 20 years of work.
As weather conditions ease, farmers let their herds return to graze on the fields. But the biggest problem remains. No one knows how much longer the volcanic eruptions will go on for.
Close up, it's easy to see why the cloud of ash from Iceland's volcano isn't just posing a problem for aircraft. Its sheer size has also led to worries about the potential effect on the health of those living in its shadow. Those most at risk are in southern Iceland, where ash has now been coming down for several days. An emergency centre has been set up in collaboration with the Red Cross, and everyone's being told to stay indoors as much as possible. But neither the government nor the local population are giving in to panic. Around 6 in the morning we could smell sulphur a bit. That's how we knew something was going on. In the evening there was a smell around some of the windows that weren't tight enough, but it was no problem. Doctors and meteorologists in Reykjavik think the volcanic activity is tailing off, but can't say if it will end in days or weeks.
The plume is low at the moment, but if it bursts up, at higher levels we have strong northwesterly winds, which carry it to Europe. So it's very difficult to say what's going to happen.
Will the European continent be affected by the ash fallout? Certain big cities like Paris and Vienna have seen an increase in pollution in recent days. In Vienna particularly, it's 3 times as high, but it's difficult to say if this is a direct effect of the ash.
Well, we have an impact, we have an increase in particles in the air we breathe, but it's not due to the volcanoes, it's due to the weather conditions, because we have an atmosphere which is quite stable, with low winds and a lot of sun.
The World Health Organization says if a lot of ash spreads at ground level, there could be a slight risk to health. Those with breathing difficulties and conditions like asthma will be most at risk.
And now the rest of today's news.
Ukraine has struck a deal with Russia to cut gas import prices by 30%, heralding warmer ties between the two countries. Kiev needs cheaper gas to reduce its budget deficit and secure a $12 billion credit line from the IMF. The deal means Ukraine will pay Russia no more than $230 per cubic metre of gas, down from the current price of $334. It marks a sharp